Hey, good morning. I hope you are all doing really well. It's an absolute pleasure to be presenting to you today. So my name's Paul Gurney, and I'm here today to challenge you, to ask you one question, which is, what is it you can become? What do you guys have the potential to achieve in your lives? You know, could you be CEOs of companies? Could you be a president or prime minister? Could you be an Olympic gold medalist? What is it that you are capable of achieving? Now, I'm really lucky to work with some amazing people. So I work with presidents, Nobel Peace Prize winners, 15 Olympic gold medalists. I've worked with record-breaking adventurers. Bear Grylls is my business partner, so I work with Bear every day. And what we are focused on at Becoming X is all about helping people realize their potential. So we're a brand new education company. Some of what you're going to see today has never been shown anywhere in the world. And what we're here to do is try and help you understand what it takes to be a world-class performer. So I'm going to ask you one question, which is, if you think of all the amazing people that you know, whether they're Olympians, whether they're in politics or business, what is it that they know or they can do that you can't? So if you think about this question, you know, if you knew what some of these people knew, what could you become? And that's what we're here to do to help you. So I'd just like to share a very short film with my business partner, with Bear, to give a bit of an insight into what we're about.
I don't have a lot of self-confidence, and I never really had much self-belief either. But I think we can draw strength from our weaknesses. That it's okay to not feel super confident. So I really reach out to young people who are the unseen and the unsung and the uncelebrated. I often say that the people who do so well in life have had a real dogged battle at school. They never got any prizes, they never got into the top teams, they never got the A. Just to stay afloat, they were swimming so frantically, trying to kick to the shore, and all the people at school think, look, there's Johnny still kicking, and they laugh. But the thing is, when they hit life, and they get out of that seat,
I'll shout, I'll make sure they can.
Everyone else is
if they can't hear me,
they've never had
they'll
a
be all
try.
right.
Johnny, he's been kicking like madness every year. Nobody's ever noticed him until he gets down there, bro. Wow. Ultimately, the only thing that really matters is that spirit of endeavour, of never giving up. N-G-U, never give up.
So the big message you'll get from Bear is that it doesn't really matter what your grades are at school. Whilst it's important, it's not what's going to make you succeed in life. There's a lot more to it than your academics. And as I said, we've been working with some of the most amazing people alive. So just last weekend, I was with Roger Federer. I've got David Beckham. Next week, we've got Anthony Joshua, Kate Winslet, Julia Roberts, some amazing people coming up. And they're all sharing their stories about what does it actually take to succeed. So what I want to show you is a very quick view. We've developed what we think is essentially the list. What does it take to succeed? So firstly, we think it's about skills. It's about your ability to solve problems. It's about your ability to communicate well on a one-to-one level, written, and in big groups like this. It's about being a player coach. It's about working well in a team, but also being a great leader. Then it's about your knowledge. What do you know? Having a really solid foundation of learning every single day. It's about having a healthy outlook and understanding how to keep your body and mind as healthy as you possibly can. And then it's about being a master practitioner. Whatever it is that you choose to do, being an absolute expert in that and really learning what it takes. And with those skills alone, with that knowledge and skills, you can become very successful, but you won't become super successful, because actually the big things that help you become successful is the attitudes that you bring. It's about dreaming big and having an ambition about what you want to do in life. It's about having the courage. We all do difficult things in life that require us to be courageous every single day. And then we talk about being a relentless survivor, never giving up. All of us, every person that I speak to has these massive challenges in their life. It's about how you overcome them that makes the difference. Then lastly, it's about relationships. You can't do any of this on your own. Whether you want to become an entrepreneur, a doctor, a physicist, whatever it is you want to do, you can't do that on your own. So it's about the relationships you have, your ability to form relationships, your ability to negotiate, to come up with agreements that help everybody. And lastly, it's about being respectful, being kind, being honest, and being a trustworthy individual. But today, I want to share my own story, because I'm standing here on this stage in a very unlikely outcome for my own life. I mean, I grew up in a place called Torquay. It's one of the poorest boroughs in the UK. Neither of my parents went to university. My dad was the only one in my family that worked. He retired on about £19,000. So we didn't have a huge amount of money growing up. But actually, where I've ended up, I've been very lucky. You know, I've run multi-million-pound businesses and now work with all these incredible people and hopefully really give something back to society in terms of what we're doing now. But the only reason I've been able to do this is by learning some of these key attributes myself. So I'd like to share my own story. But to begin with, I'd like to, firstly, I know you've all just sat down. I'd like you to get back and stand up on your feet, if you may. And what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to read out some temperatures, okay, in Celsius. And if you have not been at this temperature, I'd like you to sit down. So we're going to start nice and warm. We've all been at 0 degrees, at freezing. -5. So if you've not been at -5, please sit down. -10. So this is a very cold day in England. You've all been at -10. That's amazing. -15. Okay, there we go. Okay, so -20 for the guys. You can put your hands up if you've been in this temperature. -20. -25. Still got. Where were you at -25? Where were you at -25? Sorry? America. Okay, fantastic. Anyone been below -25? Yeah, where was that? In Lapland. Okay. So I'd like to share a story of when I lived at -50 degrees for over 6 weeks by walking from land to the North Pole. Something only a very few number of people have done. So 245 people thereabouts have walked from land to a pole, and I was one of them. And -50 is a very scary place to be. It's a very good friend of mine. It's a guy called Nigel Vardy. My friend Nigel got stuck on a mountain in Alaska. He had one night at -50. His friend got injured and they had to basically sleep in a crevasse overnight. And Nigel got severe frostbite. Lost all of his fingers, lost all of his toes, his left foot, his nose and his cheek. One night. And I had to learn to survive at this temperature for over 6 weeks. So what I want to do is share just 3 lessons that I've learned from everything that I've done in my life, and particularly some of the more adventurous things that I've done. So my first lesson is about dreaming big. But not only just dreaming big, but having a plan to how you're going to achieve it. I have lots of people saying to me, Paul, I want to be an Olympic gold medalist, I want to be a CEO. That's great, and I love it, but how are you going to get there? So what was my story? I set out to do the world's toughest race. It's a race from land to the North Pole. Only happens every 2 years, and in fact, they've stopped doing it now because it's just too difficult. With climate change, very difficult thing to do. So to put this into perspective, this is like walking out of your door, walking out of the door here, walking to northern Scotland, carrying 70 kilos of kit over frozen sea. That's how hard it is. When I was telling everyone I'd signed up, and it was a very hard process to get into this, I had to go through a selection process, interviews, group exercises, physical assessments, and I finally made it. I was selected, I was telling everyone, I've been selected to take part in the toughest race on earth. And everyone says to me, Paul, you're going to die because you're a fat consultant, you sit behind a desk, you can't do this. And you're going to come across that a lot of people telling you that you won't be able to do what it is you set out to do. And that's fine. Just ignore it, okay? Listen to maybe some of their advice, but actually just think, okay, that doesn't matter. What do you know? Everyone said to me I had to be Bear Grylls to go and do this, which I now find quite funny because I work with him every day. But you don't. You can learn these things. Anyway, I was telling lots of people that I was doing the world's toughest race, and someone said to me, you're doing the Marathon des Sables. I was like, well, what's that? And I had a look at it, and again, it's the world's toughest race, and it's a 260-kilometer race running across the Sahara Desert in plus 50 degrees. And I thought, well, that can't be right. You can't have 2 world's toughest races, because I'm doing one. There's this other one that people are telling me about. So I decided to do that as well. And I ended up doing the 2 toughest races on Earth in the same year, something that only 3 people had ever done them both anyway, but I had the added challenge of doing them in the same year. So I had to learn what it takes. And I'll be really stressed at this point. I had to learn. Don't look at me and think, what's this guy got that I haven't? There was nothing. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I had to learn. Secondly, it's about mastering your craft. Don't think that I suddenly said, I can walk to the North Pole and I could go and do it. I spent 2 years learning how to do this. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of that story. So firstly, I've got a quiz question, and I have some amazing prizes with me today. As a fellow entrepreneur, Bear has just brought out some Bear Grylls protein bars, which are made with worms, with worm flour. So there's a prize for how many North Poles are there? Hands up. 1, 2. Any advance on 2? 2. Any advance on 2? 4. Any advance on 4? 1 more than 4, somebody? Yep. 5. Well done. Okay, catching. Okay, can you name those 5? Can you name the 5 North Poles? No, okay. So you have the geographic North Pole, which is the one that the Earth spins around to 90 degrees north. You have the magnetic North Pole, which is when you're looking at a compass, that's where it's pointing north, which is where I walked. It's about, if you can see my map, it's about here. Then we've got the geomagnetic North Pole. If there's any geographers, they can probably explain that. It's a kind of mix between two. It's just off Greenland. Then you have something called the pole of inaccessibility, which is a kind of a man-made pole, the furthest point from land. So it's about where the eye is in Arctic on this map here. No one has ever walked to this pole. 1,100 miles from land, no one's ever done it. The last big challenge in polar exploration. And fifthly, there's an amazing town in Alaska called North Pole. And I've been there too. And it's when you're a kid in the US and you send a letter to Santa, that's where it goes. So all of the lampposts there are big candy canes. You've got reindeer knocking about the entire year. An amazing place. So anyway, this is my story about walking from land to the magnetic North Pole. But as I said, I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to do this. I spent a lot of time learning my craft. So first of all, I climbed a mountain in Africa called Kilimanjaro. Has anyone ever climbed Kilimanjaro? Okay, I've done it 5 times now. It's an amazing mountain. 6 kilometers up in the sky, but you can do it without a huge amount of training. You need to do some, but it's not technical. Then I went to Everest Base Camp in 2008. I then decided to run a marathon. Now, those of you looking at me think, you've got a fat guy on stage, he's not a runner. My wife always says, you're 6'3", you're 100 kilos, and 1/10 of a ton, she always reminds me. I'm not really a runner, okay? I'm a big guy, and it's physically quite hard. But I said to myself, can I run a marathon? And I did. And it was a difficult process through training, but I managed to run a marathon. Didn't think I could do that. Then I tried to learn more skills about how to survive in different situations. I decided to drive a 1-litre Ford Fiesta from London 1/3 of the way around the planet to Mongolia. And most of that was off-road. Learning what happens when you break down in Uzbekistan. How do you get yourself out of that problem? So I'm learning all of these key skills as I go. Then I climbed a mountain in Africa called Rash Dashan. It's the highest mountain in North Africa. And this was when I started training properly for my polar challenge. So I'd signed up to it at this point here. I then decided to ask myself the question, what are your limits? And I'll put this back on you. What could you do individually? And I was watching a TV show. It was a Thursday night, I remember it very well, and it was a guy who'd escaped from prison. It wasn't Prison Break, it was before that time, and the police guards, the prison guards went into this cell, and this guy had gone. And they said, well, where's he gone? He's been on foot for 24 hours. How far could he go? And I thought, what a really interesting question. Let's see how far I can run in 24 hours non-stop. So Saturday morning, got a rucksack on, decided to run as far as I could go. And I ran just over 100 miles, or 165 kilometers. And again, don't think it was pretty. This isn't Mo Farah gracefully running around London and the southeast. I was hobbling, my feet were bleeding, but I managed to keep on going. And I managed to run all that way and break a huge record in terms of a 100-mile run. Then I had to learn how to survive in an extremely cold environment. So I decided to climb the highest mountain in Europe, Mount Elbrus. It's in Russia, just under 6,000 meters, quite a technical mountain, crampons, ice axe, roped up. Then I climbed a mountain called Aconcagua. Has anyone heard of that? Second highest mountain in the 7 summits, the highest one outside the Himalayas, 7 kilometers high. It takes a month to climb that mountain. Then 2013, the North Pole. 2014, ran through the Sahara Desert. So you can see my progression here. This wasn't a case of just saying I can go to the North Pole. Quick exam question, also for a bar. Where's this? Buckingham, yes. Well done. Are you from here? Okay, good guess. So if you were to climb Aconcagua, the mountain I just talked about, and you were at the summit and you were looking down, this is the view you would get of this building right now, which is somewhere in the middle here. Okay, so you as individuals, without any breathing apparatus or anything, some training and preparation, you can walk 7 kilometers in the sky. Okay, 42% of oxygen at this height. And that's incredible. And again, the people that do this, they're not superstars, they're not heroes. They're people like you who've just learned how to do this. Then I had to really prepare for the North Pole. I had to learn what it was like to be in a freezing environment. So this is me at an extreme environment center. And I am wearing underwear in this photo. It doesn't look like it. And I was trying to learn what happens when your body starts freezing. So they put me in basically a deep freeze at about -25. And we started to monitor, how I was feeling when I started getting hypothermic, when my skin started freezing. Also, I knew what that was like. I then had to eat a massive amount of food. I had to put on about 2.5, 3 stone. Does anyone know why? Shout out. Insulation, someone said yes, absolutely. Why else? More energy, yes, really good. So number 1, there's a calorie equation. So every day, so grown adults are meant to eat, guys are meant to eat about 2,500 calories. For ladies, it's about 2,000. In the Arctic, when you're freezing cold and you're having to just keep warm, you're just staying still, you're using 5,000 calories. Add to that, carrying 80 kilos, walking 12 hours a day, you're using almost 10,000 calories. So every single day, if you just eat 2,500, you're going to lose 7,500 calories. So we could only eat about 4,000 a day. So every single day, we had to go to our bodies for that extra 6,000 calories. So to make that real for you, imagine if you ran 2 marathons every single day for the next month, every single day, and ate no food whatsoever, nothing. That's the impact it has on your body. So I lost about 16.5 kilograms in 6 weeks. So in pounds, that's it's almost 40 pounds, 35, 40 pounds. So a massive amount of weight. So I had to eat as much as I could. So this was my food for about 2 days. Okay, I would just eat anything anyone put in front of me. I was sponsored by Pie Minister, the pie company, who sent me loads of pies. And I got really fat. And I took with me 292 bits of kit to the North Pole. Okay? If you think of every little bit of kit, I knew I had to know how everything worked. If a tent rips in that environment, you don't know how to fix the zip. That's life-threatening. Okay, what happens if your ski breaks? Now, if you think of everything you need to survive for 6 weeks, this is before we even took food. We had 1/3 of a ton of food. We had shotguns. We had all of our ammo that was all shipped up in advance. So I spent a very long time looking at every single part of my kit and understanding it and learning about that. We then flew out to Canada, 9 hours north of Ottawa. This is the most northerly inhabited part of Canada. It's a little town called Resolute Bay. That is literally it. There's nothing else. And we go on a little cargo plane, and that's where we started. And again, we had to spend some time really practicing and learning. Now, Resolute Bay is a weird place. It has one shop, which you can see here, that has a frozen food section, which I found very funny because has anyone ever been in their freezer at home? You guys should do more, okay? Get in your freezer, see what it's like. It's minus 17 degrees in a deep freeze at home, okay? Outside was minus 42 degrees, okay? So bizarrely, it was 25 degrees warmer in that deep freeze than it was outside. But a very strange place, and again, we spent a week prepping all of our kits, practicing, going out walking, testing everything before we set off. It's a team of 12, 4 teams of 3, and it was technically a race. And off we went. You know, we couldn't tell the difference between the sea and the land. It all looked the same. We're walking across a frozen ocean. And this was my view for the next 6 weeks. And a bit like, you know, whether it's at school or whether it's when you leave school and you're looking at this horizon, you're just thinking, I don't know what this is going to be like. It's quite scary. I had 6 weeks with no contact with the rest of the world. I only had satellite phone for emergencies. My family didn't know, how it was going. It was quite scary, and this was my view. And you're going to face this in so many situations in life where you're going to start out on a path, and you've got to make a choice. Are you going to do it, or does it look scary, and you're going to not do it? My big advice, always go and do it. And this was our first night on the ice. So we're about to get into 24-hour day sunlight. This is March in the Arctic. Land behind us, and it looks like a beautiful place. So this is with our team, so just 3 of us in a tent, the same sort of size as a double bed. So we had to learn how to communicate really well with each other, because if you've spent 12 hours a day with someone lying next to you, you're going to have to be very good friends, because you're always in a life-threatening situation. Even in our tent at night, it's minus 20 degrees. So we're all at risk of frostbite, hypothermia. So we had to learn those communication skills. So when you're under pressure, how do you work well with people? So I was mastering my craft. I learned all of this. But my biggest lesson to all of you in whatever it is that you choose to do is about giving it all of your effort, but just never giving up. You're going to fail so many times in the things you set out to do, and that's fine. Failure is good. You learn from failure. But I'm going to talk about resilience now, that ability to keep on going when things get tough. Now, I'd like a volunteer, if I may. You're close. Come on up. What's your name?
James.
James, come on up, James. Okay, so James, firstly, well done to James, because he doesn't know what he's volunteered for.
I'm scared.
You should be scared, James. Paul, good to meet you. Can I ask you to take your shoes off, James? And your jackets, please. So James is going to become a polar racer, okay? So you've seen lots of nice photos and it all looks really pretty, but I want to give you an idea of quite how hard it is to be in this environment. So James, if you just come on over here. Now, if you're going to imagine, James is just wearing some kind of thin trousers like long johns and a thin t-shirt at this stage. I'm going to dress you up if you're okay. Right, so the starting position. First thing, you always need a pair of gloves. There's only one time in the Arctic you take your gloves off, and I'll let you use your imagination for that.
Eating food. Oh, go to the toilet.
Yes, well done. Okay, so gloves are always on. Next thing, James is going to have a light fleece. So just fleece on, right arm through. Okay. Now, what you're trying to do in the Arctic is keep as much of the warm air in. Sorry guys, keep it down, there we go. We're trying to keep as much of the warm air in and keep all of the cold air away from your face. So first you're finding it's quite hard to do things in gloves. Just leave it, it's fine, don't worry. Next thing, this is going to go over your head. This is to keep the cold air off your neck. The next thing you're going to want is a balaclava. I'll let you put that on. So it's quite a loose one. So over your head should be all of your head. That's nice, good. Okay. Now, the next piece of kit, it's a very specialist piece of kit. It's called a windsuit. Does anyone want to hazard a guess at how much a windsuit costs? About 2,000 quid, if you're wondering. So don't rip this, please, James. Okay, so you're going to put this on like a pair of trousers. Okay. Oh, there you go. Over the top. Okay, and just mind this bit here. Okay, and if you just do this one up here. Okay, now you'll notice James still has a lot of his face exposed. And when your face is exposed in the Arctic, it can literally freeze and die. You've seen my friend Nigel. So we've got to protect every part of your face. So James, if you don't mind, I'm going to do this for you because it's a little tricky to do yourself. Okay. Now, secondly, you'll notice, James, those gloves aren't going to cut the mustard out there, so we need to wear some proper gloves. So we're going to put these on. So again, you won't find these on the high street. These are really specialist gloves. They cost about £150. Amazing. Now, James has still got a little bit of face visible, so we're going to put you in some goggles. Are they on okay? Okay. Now, James is pretty much ready to go, okay? So you'll notice that isn't actually much clothes. All you're wearing is a thin layer of fleece and this. Okay, so that's not really that much to keep you warm. So it's all about your body temperature and moving as fast and hard as you can. Now, firstly, we're going to give James a massive round of applause because that's quite a bold thing to do. If you can make it down, can I ask you to just sit down and kind of undress slowly over there? Is that okay? So the tricky thing about this is with all of this kit that you've got, that's very hard to manage yourself. So if you imagine a situation where, you know, it's either a complete whiteout, you can't see anything, or you get these massive blocks of ice. You know, people think the Arctic's flat. It's not. You get all this ice formation and you get blocks of ice that are higher than this room. And suddenly you're faced with these boundaries, which is, what do you do? And what do you do when you have an obstacle? And again, put this back to you guys. When you face an obstacle like this, a big wall of ice, what are you going to do? You've got three choices. You either stop and turn around and give up, you go around it, or you go over it. And that's the same with every single challenging decision you have in your life. And we had to do this. As a team, we had to walk around and walk over these blocks of ice. It could be 50 miles along. And every single day, you might only go 2-3 miles a day to clamber through this ice. Really difficult scenarios. You imagine wearing all this gear, it's windy, you can't hear each other, you're shouting, you've just got 12 hours in your own head. It's a tough place to be. But this is what it's like. This is what you'll find in life once you finish school. School is great. It's a brilliant place to learn, a brilliant place to practice. But when you finish, you've got that question of what are you going to do? Are you going to go to college? Are you going to go to university? Are you going to go and get a job? You're going to be an entrepreneur. But suddenly that path isn't formed, and you're going to have these challenging environments, and you have to find your own way. Now, there's always a few things that are very dangerous in the Arctic. One I've talked about is hypothermia, when you're freezing to death. 2 is frostbite and losing bits of your limbs. The third one is falling through the ice. Remember, I'm just walking on frozen ocean. I can't tell whether it's this thick or that thick. It does happen. You fall through the ice with all that gear on, and you're freezing cold. Does anyone want to name another risk that you're facing in that part of the world? Animals. There's only really one animal I'm scared of in that environment, which is our lovely polar bear. And polar bears are incredible animals. They can weigh up to a ton. They can run faster than horses. And of course, they can smell you from several miles away. But the big thing is, of course, they are white. And they're the only animal known to hunt humans. And this is, for example, is one of the things we're always worried about. This is a seal, obviously didn't last very long. Very, very dangerous. So we had to really, again, learn how to defend ourselves against polar bears. I very quickly want to tell you about what's probably one of the worst days of my life, which was on this expedition. This was about 22 days in. We're tired at this point. It's difficult physically in our body. And we set out in the morning, and it was cold. It was sort of minus 30, minus 35, but it wasn't ridiculous. But then about an hour into that day, this massive storm came in. Huge, huge storm. We're getting blown in the face, and suddenly the temperature's down at minus 50. With wind chill, it was minus 68 degrees Celsius. So to put that in practice, if your skin was exposed for 1 minute, you would be losing your fingers. That's how cold it was. And we had a really difficult situation because it was too cold to stop moving, and it was too windy to put up a tent. So we walked for about 12 hours and got behind some of those big blocks of ice that we found, and we managed to put up our tents. And doing that, we had one guy in our team who was super experienced, who was due to take over should a really dangerous situation arise. And actually it was his team's tent we were putting up, and it took 6 of us. It was that windy, and the tent pole snapped. Okay, we're trained for that, that's fine, but it's difficult. You've got to take that big glove off you were wearing, just wearing a thin glove, and unthread that tent pole. And Steve did this, and we put the tent up. We get back into our tents, and wow, day's over. We actually stayed in the tents for 3.5 days waiting for this storm to pass. But what Steve hadn't told us was he had his glove off for 1 minute. And he said after 3 days, guys, I've got a problem, which is he had kind of stage 3 frostbite. So all of his fluid in his fingers is frozen, the cells burst, and this is why you see fingers like golf balls. And he's at risk now of losing his fingers. And you have to, again, how do you adapt? When things go wrong, how do you cope with that? So you do the only thing you can do in the Arctic, and you call an aeroplane to come and get you. And again, not a cheap operation to call an aeroplane to come and rescue somebody, but it's what we had to do. And Steve got on the flight. We got him out of there, got him to a hospital within probably about 12 hours of leaving the ice. And he kept his fingers. He doesn't have any feeling in his fingers, but he's kept his fingers. But again, as a team, when you're working in a team, you're always going to face situations which are difficult, and you have to think through what's the best outcome for all of you. But after about 28 days on the ice, in the end, we decided the weather was so bad, we didn't do this as a race. We decided we had to work together as a team. But we got in a line, and we walked, and we stood on the North Pole. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because again, so few people alive have ever done this, but also that achievement, that effort that went into doing this over 2 years. And we did it. It was an amazing team. Unfortunately, all guys, no reason why it should be. It was just part of the people who signed up for this. And we made it. You know, I lost 16 kilos, but I finished this expedition knowing that whatever challenges I had in life, I knew I would be able to overcome them. So the reason I get to work with people like Roger Federer and Beckham and those guys is because I've put myself out there. I've got a great vision for what Becoming X is, trying to help people like you to learn what it takes to succeed. So my big takeaway for you guys is about just putting yourself out there. You've got to put yourselves in situations where you're going to learn, okay? You're not all going to learn in a nice air-conditioned theatre. You have to go out there and quite literally get your hands muddy. Go out and put yourself in challenging situations. Always ask yourself, what can you do? Okay, what's your boundary and how can you push that boundary? Because all the people that you see on TV that have done all these amazing things, they're no different from where you guys started. Your choice is how are you going to take your life forward? What is it that you want to do? But just have that knowledge and confidence that you can go out and do amazing, amazing things. So at that point, I'll pause and I'll ask for any questions you may have. Yes? What kept me going? I think it's a few things. One is a £40,000 bill if I decide to stop and get an aeroplane to come and get you. That's one. But the biggest thing is about the team. Right? You set off as a team. You spent 2 years training together. I didn't want to let my buddies down. Right? We're all working towards this amazing goal that is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But it was so hard. Like every single day you wake up, your hands are freezing, like so cold you can't do up your zips or anything like that. Freezing cold. And it's so physically demanding on your body, 12 hours a day, hauling 80 kilos. But it's really just, you know, a few things. And it's kind of what's important to you in your life. But a lot of it was about my friends, about my family and delivering after 2 years of training. Yes?
You said that you went through the Sahara as well. So if you had to do one of those two walks again, either the Sahara or the North Pole, which one would you do?
Brilliant question. Okay, so first of all, if you want to see what that's like, running through the Sahara Desert, it's as hard as it sounds. It's running through soft sand for about 30% of it. It was over 50 degrees, went to 54 degrees. And you're doing a marathon a day, every day for 5 days. And one day you're doing 2 marathons while also carrying all of your own gear. The simple question by far is I would rather go to the Sahara, okay? Much, much safer in that I had helicopters to come and get me within an hour. We had a lot of support and doctors there. And quite simply, you know, there's a lot lower risk of dying from running across the Sahara. But great question. Take 2 more. Yes?
How many people were with you at the Sahara Desert?
The Sahara, so it's a big race. So about 1,100 people set off to do this race every single year. And normally about 800 finish, to give you an idea. So you're probably sort of 1 in 5 chance of not completing that race. And these are people that have trained for years, you know, kind of elite athletes in some cases. It's a very, very tough race. But again, everyone can do it. You know, I'm not a great runner, but you could do it as well. Take a couple more. Some from the back. Okay, I'm kind of blinded by this. Let me. Any more questions? Yes. Sorry.
You know your friend that got stage 3 cross.
Yes.
Did you have to pay the 40,000?
So the question was, did our friend who got evacuated have to pay the bill? So no. So we all had insurance. And we actually managed to do it with a drop-off of food for us as well. So actually we conveniently managed to time it so we didn't have to fork out a huge amount of money. Okay, last question. Yes? How much food did we have to take? That's a brilliant question. So we took, every single day we had about 4 or 5 ration packs. Each one was about 300 to 400 grams. It works out at about 4,500 calories a day. So we took contingency, so we took about 34 days worth of food. If I'm putting that into practice, it was about 150 ration packs each. In total, it was 1/3 of a ton. Okay, so a massive, massive amount of food we had to ship out there. Great, listen, I've hit my time, but I want to say a big thank you to all of you and just wish you all the very best. You know, you guys can do some amazing stuff. Just go out there and make it happen. Thank you very much.